Hello there, this is James Oscroft, it is 1978, and as the demonisation of benefit cheats, skivers, dole bludgers, welfare queens, or whatever we choose to call the boogeymen which are the target of right-wing propaganda continues across the entire developed world, the very fact that so many of us are outraged by the idea that the poor can receive things without working for them, while at the same time utterly ignoring the fact that the rich receive things without working for them every second of every day, reveals the concrete and backward nature of most people's mindset when it comes to economics, still thinking entirely in terms of it's mine because I worked hard for it, as if they had literally grown the corn with their own hands, the same mindset, by the way, which such people always inevitably use to rationalise their not racist and not xenophobic honest position on immigration and refugees, talking as if there is a fixed amount of food, housing, medical treatment, education and everything else available, which is created directly by the tribe's physical labour, and therefore that the tribe alone should be able to decide who reaps the fruits of that labour. As a matter of fact, the more that I studied Marxism on one end of the spectrum and anarcho-capitalism, or whatever label people choose to apply to the dogma of let the market decide on the other, the more it became apparent that both extremes of economic theory are equally hampered by the fatal flaw that in one way or another they are each entirely dependent upon localization in some way, shape, form or fashion, upon all communities turning inwards, becoming more or less self-sufficient, and as a result returning to the good old days in which everyone had a role, everyone had a purpose, and everything which you consumed was produced by or traded for the sweat of one's brow. Obviously, though, before any economics majors or card-carrying communists or anarcho-capitalists attempt to leap down my throat, that is a gross oversimplification for the sake of brevity, because rather than discussing economics, I'm trying to make a point about our collective mindset as a society, which is that in the modern world, in which money is increasingly imaginary and technology is making more and more people redundant in every sense of that term every single day, with every year that passes, the idea that we must work for our daily bread is becoming increasingly asinine and obsolete. Indeed, the absurdity of welfare-to-work programs, or whatever individual governments choose to call them, is that people who can't find paying jobs are being forced to work as little more than slaves for no other reason than because of this obsolete mantra of working for our daily bread, because literally, even if they sit in their pyjamas watching TV for the rest of their natural lives, how does it hurt us or the economy to simply give them the money that they need to live, when at the same time the supposedly fiscally conservative governments, which are often elected on the promise of punishing these parasites for daring to take our hard-earned tax money, are giving hundreds of billions in tax breaks, subsidies and corporate welfare to billionaires and corporations whose profits are already obscene.
You mean to tell me that as a business owner, for every intern I accept, I get an additional $1,000? Is this a wet dream?
Probably I'm in it. Nonetheless, you'll get an extra $1,000 for each intern you accept.
That are only getting paid a fifth of the minimum wage in this country?
Yes, but we don't have to pay them that. The Australian taxpayer does. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year are going not to infrastructure, schools and hospitals, but to giving business owners an irresistible incentive to fire their entire full-time workforce and hire a bunch of interns. That will surely destroy the middle class and put the economy into a nosedive, just as it has in every other country it's been tried in. Because what businessman in their right mind would employ a full-time staff when they can have one for free?
So where exactly is the right outrage against this parasitic theft? Why don't we simply accept the fact that there aren't enough jobs and pay everyone a basic income using the money that we give to corporations and billionaires for literally no reason at all? Because according to the concrete rationale, which is still trapped at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and sucking the balls of Adam Smith, they're rich because they worked hard for their wealth. They earned it, and so therefore taxing them is a crime against humanity. Of course, the fact that they usually inherited their wealth, if we're talking about individuals, and the absurdity of giving billions of dollars to corporations who are already making billions, none of that even crosses the minds of people who hear the word welfare and automatically think nigger in the US, for example, because once again, their minds are still trapped in the primitive tribalism of "this belongs to tribe, outsider try to take thing, bash outsider with club." But although I can already hear the outraged clattering of keyboards and we could spend the rest of eternity arguing about every single one of these issues, the reason why I'm making this video is to point out that unless something truly radical occurs, such as a global Luddite movement or the sudden disappearance of at least 25% of the human population, as I indicated earlier, technological development alone will continue to fundamentally alter society by taking over more and more jobs which used to be performed by human beings and leaving only service positions or even lower paid slave work, which only exploited immigrants and workers in third world countries are willing to perform until we invent machines that can perform those jobs as well. For example, even if in defiance of reality itself, Trump is somehow able to usher in a fossil fuel and manufacturing renaissance, sorry everyone, but even leaving aside the fact that the supposed $50 trillion worth of fossil fuels which he plans to exploit is only worth what people are actually willing to pay for it, and even China is currently switching to renewables, once again demonstrating the concrete thinking which is the basis of all conservatism. Even those jobs which haven't already been replaced with robots will be replaced with robots sooner or later, until eventually the idea that everyone has to work because reasons will be as ludicrous and outrageous in our society as declaring that girls can't go to school because it's their duty to walk the 6 miles to and from the nearest stream to collect water every single day. Not because of a socialist or communist revolution, other theories which, as I say, are equally flawed as a result of the fact that they were devised by humans who were and still are trapped in the mindset of thinking about economics entirely in terms of barter, but because with every day that passes, it becomes increasingly difficult to cling to the conceit that our work has any objective measurable value, and that those who work hard and are qualified automatically deserve more compensation than those who aren't and don't. Take, for example, the asinine argument against raising the federal minimum wage in the US that burger flippers at McDonald's shouldn't be paid the same as paramedics, and consider the self-poning irony of the fact that instead of unionising and demanding better pay, better benefits, better hours and what have you, paramedics are incensed that burger flippers could be paid the same as they are. And also consider that, as I discussed in my video Peak Education, links down at the underbar, the demand that everyone who works at a non-skilled job simply earn the qualifications to get a better job would be a joke if it wasn't so absurd, because reality dictates that there are only ever so many jobs to go around, meaning that assuming you meet any physical requirements, age requirements, or what have you which may exist for those positions, no matter how hard you work to qualify as a paramedic, firefighter, doctor, lawyer, accountant, executive, car mechanic, IT specialist, clinical psychologist, lifeguard, or anything else, only so many will ever be required. But if we simply give everyone more money, then who's going to earn that money, Even leaving aside the possible ways in which macroeconomics could develop in the future that I am in no way qualified to discuss, the reality that, as I touched on earlier, in the modern world, the entire concept of money is increasingly a figment of our collective imagination, meaning that stocks and shares are like Peter Pan, only rising because we believe in them, and there is literally no reason why a house in Sydney, Melbourne, London, or Manhattan should cost 100 times more than we could ever possibly afford beyond rampant self-serving greed, as well as the fact that current technological developments suggest that we may be able to simply order food, clothes, and whatever else we desire within reason from a hole in the wall in less than a century, On top of the self-poning absurdity of government spending more on trying to root out benefit cheats and scroungers than they actually save by cutting their welfare, in case you haven't been paying attention, right now as we speak, our governments give hundreds of billions every single year to billionaires and corporations who often don't pay a penny in tax, and when all is said and done, the only thing that prevents us from taking that money and using it to ensure that everyone has a basic standard of living is the lie of trickle-down, job creators, and the dogma that taxation is theft.